It's 1984, Lake City, Texas. A woman named I-45 is working as a bartender. She's 23 years old. She's got a life, people who care about her, a future she's building. One night, she uses the payphone and she vanishes, just gone. A few months later, a dog out in a field about 25 acres of scrubland near Calder Road finds something, a skull. That's how this starts. Not with the detective, not with the tip line, with the dog, a field, and a skull. In that field, it doesn't stop giving up its dead. Over the next 7 years, three more women would be found in that same patch of ground. And here's what haunts me. Two of them disappeared after using payphones. Payphones just miles apart. Payphones that should have been safe. And over the next 4 decades, the number of bodies found along I-45 corridor between Houston and Galveston would climb to 34. Some identified, some still nameless, some with suspects, some with nothing but questions. This is the Texas killing fields. Welcome back to Coffee and Crime with Mom. I'm Nicole, Mom.
And I'm Zaylee.
Today we're starting something big, something that can't be covered in just one episode. We're doing a 3-part series on the Texas killing fields.
And honestly, I'm super glad that you're taking the lead on this one, Mom, because this case is a lot. And it's crazy because I've grown up and like basically was raised out in like the Houston-ish area my whole
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yep.
And a couple of times throughout my life, I've lived literally like within an hour of where all of this was happening. And I had no idea that this was going on.
So it is a lot. It's multiple killers across multiple decades. It's law enforcement failures that are still being studied. It's families who waited decades for answers, and some who are still waiting. And it's a case that is literally still unfolding as we speak.
Literally, as in like arrests were just made a couple weeks ago.
Yes, so we're going to take this in 3 parts. Episode 1 today is the setup, the geography, the victims, the mystery of that field, and the payphones that connected them. Episode 2 will get into the suspects, the theories, the forensic breakthroughs. And then in episode 3, we'll talk about what went wrong with the investigation, what changed, and where things stand right now.
I am excited for this one, so I'm ready. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Okay, so before we dive all the way in, what are we drinking today? Because I feel like I need to know you're prepared.
So today I'm trying this new like mocha or chocolate coffee
Hmm.
that you gave me and like with the little coffee, not coffee, chocolate thingies.
The little melting chocolates at
Thank
the
you.
bottom.
Thank you. I don't know why I was struggling with that.
It's okay.
Yes. Yes. With just some creamer in it.
Okay. All right. Well, I have basically the same thing. I just took the little melting chocolates and put them at the bottom with some strong, strong coffee and a little creamer. And I have my little cute cup that my white lady gave me. I'm sorry, my mom.
The white lady is her mom. Yes. Yes.
Yes, that is Daly's poo and my white lady. So it's a
Yes,
little
that's my
fancy
boo.
cup. Cause we got to be fancy sometimes, especially with all this going on. We got to do what we can to keep our spirits up. Right, so I want to take a quick minute to clarify our schedule for this series because we're doing something a little different.
Right. So this ended up turning into a three-parter, which is not what we were expecting when
No,
we originally said we're going to be doing the Texas killing fields next.
right?
So,
Yeah, it's a 3-parter because it's so much information. Like I was saying, so just for episode 1, we'll be doing that today, and we'll just kind of be covering, giving you an idea, setting up the scene. And then episode 2 will be next Monday, and 3 drops the Monday after that. So over the next 3 weeks, every Monday, you'll get a new installment of our Texas Killing Field series.
Yes, and then on Fridays, we are still doing
Yes. So on Fridays, we're doing mini episodes, little quick hits, case updates, behind the scenes, maybe some listener questions if you send them in. Those will be shorter, punchier, and they'll go up on our socials as teasers throughout the week. And those are going to be more of the cases that they'll still usually have some true crime because we'll be updating other things or covering cases that haven't completed yet that are kind of big at the moment that we're interested in. And then maybe just some other topics that we find interesting that we want to share with you. That'll be our mini episodes.
right, right, and so, like, we'll do after we finish the Texas killing fields,
Hmm.
we'll start back with probably giving teasers for our Monday episodes in our coffee moments, for you guys, so that way you can keep up with that schedule, and then we will give the teasers for what our Friday episodes will be
Hmm.
through social media.
Right.
They'll be posted, like, where all of our podcasts are posted, but the teasers for those won't be given in our actual episodes, they'll be given on our social media. So
Right.
if you don't follow us, go and follow us on all of the socials, the Instagrams, the
Twitter.
Twitter, Facebook. I don't think we have Facebook. I don't think we have Twitter.
We have Twitter.
We
We
have
have
Twitter.
we have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Ooh, okay. I'm on the Twitter and I didn't
I'm
know about
doing,
it. We got TikTok. We got all the stuff, and of course, our emails are
so maybe we don't have Twitter. Maybe I had an old moment. It's TikTok we have, not Twitter. It's TikTok. It was a T. We may have a Twitter. I set up something and forgot about it. So it could be Twitter, but it's so many me doing so much of the socials. Yeah, keeping up with the three that we plus YouTube and putting the shorts and stuff on there.
yeah.
So we're kind of everywhere. If you look for Coffee and Crime with Mom, you should see our pretty faces.
Yes, and we said all of that to give clarification about the JonBenet Ramsey case because
Hmm.
I said that was gonna come next on our one of our episodes. So,
Yeah. And we
yeah.
know people that's a big case and everybody gets excited when they hear it. So we'll definitely cover it at some point. It's on the list, but after this big case and then probably next we'll be doing Gilgo Beach. So those are kind of really heavy big cases, even though Gilgo Beach shouldn't be three parts. But um
Well,
I mean we don't know. We're not done with it, but I'm hoping that maybe we can keep it maybe to two. But we'll see. We however long it needs to be to get the information that we need to get out, that's how long it'll be.
right, but don't worry, that's
These just seem
coming.
heavier to me. It's like
Yeah.
you gotta really sit in it
I
for
think it just seems that way because it's so much,
right.
but we are going to do JonBenet Ramsey. It's coming, just not today.
Yeah. So let's start with the place because the place matters. The Texas killing fields refers to approximately 25-acre stretch of rural land near Calder Road and Urban Street in Leak City, Texas. So it's about halfway between Houston and Galveston, right along Interstate 45.
Right, and I have driven, that stretch of I-45 several times.
Mhm.
It's really unremarkable. It's just a highway and marshland and oil fields, and really the kind of place that you wouldn't look twice at.
Mhm. Right, exactly, and that's the point. The terrain is wild marsh, abandoned oil fields, vast beaches, land that makes concealment easy and discovery hard. Since the early 1970s, roughly 30 to 35 bodies have been found along the I-45 corridor. I'm sorry, I-45 coastal corridor. But the heart of it, the part that gets the most attention, is that 25-acre patch where four women were found between 1983 and 1991.
I mean, that's crazy. 4 women in one field in less than a decade?
Right. Yes, 4 women. And here's what makes it so complicated. Those 4 may not all have been the work of one person. In fact, the evidence suggests that probably it isn't. But before we get into that, let's talk about the corridor itself. I-45 runs from Dallas all the way down to Galveston, and along that stretch, particularly the Houston to Galveston portion, there have been clusters of disappearances and body discoveries for over 50 years. Some researchers call it the highway of tears situation, similar to what you see in Canada.
Corridor where the geography itself becomes a tool for predators, like, it
Hmm.
literally is nothing out there.
Exactly. It's easy access. It's a remote dumping sites, transient populations because there's not really any businesses or homes right there off of 45. And so for decades, law enforcement treated each case as isolated, and that caused them to miss the pattern. Now, the four women
Um,
found in that field, they are the anchor of this case. Everything else spirals out from them.
let's say their names.
Let's say their names, and let's talk about the payphones because the payphones matter. Edie was 23 years old. She worked as a bartender in League City. According to Texas Monthly and the Netflix docuseries Crime Scene, the Texas Killing Fields, Edie was last seen using a public payphone. Then she disappeared. And on April 4th, 1984, a dog roaming that field near Calder Road came back with a human skull. It was Edie.
That is so crazy that it was a dog that just randomly found her.
Hmm.
And just to touch on it, her name is Heidi, but her family did refer to her as Heidi. So that is what we're going to call her, is Heidi, because that's how they addressed her in the documentary.
Yes, and the dog found her, and that detail has always stuck with me because it tells you something about how exposed these remains were.
Right.
This wasn't a carefully hidden grave. This was a field that was in some ways being used. Edie had been shot in the head, and her discovery is what put that field on the map.
Right. And to think that it could have easily been those people's kids instead of that
Right.
dog that found that body.
Hmm. That's
It's
terrifying.
terrifying. And she was just the first one. She was not the last one found in the area.
Not by a long shot. Right. Laura Miller, found February 2nd, 1986. She was 16 years old, a sophomore at Clear Creek High School, musically gifted. She had recently moved to League City and was struggling socially due to debilitating seizures that had forced her to leave the school choir. On September 10th, 1984, Laura asked her mother to drive her to a payphone at a convenience store on the corner of West Main and Hobbs in League City. The family's home phone hadn't been connected yet. She wanted to call her boyfriend. Her mother dropped her off. Laura planned to walk the half-mile home afterward, and she never made it. Can you just imagine being her mom?
Absolutely not. I could not imagine my kid not coming home.
In the same area, the same kind of location, a public payphone where a young woman could be seen, could be watched, and could be targeted. Her parents reported her missing, but law enforcement dismissed her as a runaway, told them she'd call home, but she never did. Her father, Tim Miller, would spend the rest of his life fighting for answers. He founded Texas EquiSearch, a search and recovery organization that has helped find hundreds of missing people because of Laura. And here's the detail that still haunts Tim. Laura's body was found on February 2nd, 1986, just 60 feet, 18 meters from where Heidi Fi had been found 2 years earlier.
60 feet. Like that's not random. And they kept so in the documentary when they were talking to Tim, he was saying that while she was missing, he saw the information about Heidi and how her body had been found. If you went to the police, like this could possibly be connected. So like y'all should search the area.
Right.
And they told him these are completely isolated incidents
Mhm.
and like you need to go and like relax. And he told them and then he told Heidi's people specifically, "Don't contact each other.
Right.
They're dealing with the loss of their kid. Y'all shouldn't be in contact." And he brushed him off every time he was like, "Y'all should search this area." And he said
Right.
when they did it, literally when they found his body, it was just a couple feet from where he was telling them that he thought that they should look for her because of the
That's just
story he
crazy.
heard. So then he had to live with that because he's like, "I just listened to what the police said."
Right. And it was just 60 feet.
And it was just right there,
Right.
and they could have found her all these years ago
And
because
as
she was
Tim
there
Miller,
the whole time.
right. And as Tim Miller said, no grass has ever grown in that spot. No grass has ever grown where Laura's body was found. And here's what makes it even more disturbing. While searching for Laura, they found someone else.
Someone else. Oh my, and oh, they're so close. They're
Right.
so close.
That it just makes you I don't know, like how were you looking? What was that search like? I don't understand.
And how do you feel like they're not connected, like, they're dropped right within, and
Right,
then
not just in the same field, but next to each other
their
just
bodies
about.
were all laid out in the same position.
Mhm.
Everybody was found on their back in a certain position, almost like it was some kind somebody trying to make their, like, what they called it, their personal graveyard.
Right. And so then we have Audrey Lee Cook, also found February 2nd, 1986. And she was found, as we said, the same day as Laura Miller during the same search. She was 30 years old. She was a mechanic from Memphis, Tennessee, but she was living in the Houston area and she had been seen in December 1985. Audrey was lying near a tree in a supine position, not buried, but hidden from view. She had a small caliber gunshot wound to the back that severed her spine. Injuries were additional injuries to several ribs. But Audrey was a Jane Doe. No one knew who she was. She would remain unidentified for 33 years.
33 years as a Jane Doe, and all because when they did go to do, the identifying, like, how they figured out who these people were, they used the dental records, and they just didn't have her dental records, or she didn't pop up in any, like, missing persons
Yeah.
system. It nothing matched, like, her description once they did what they could to try to bring, like, her back to
Right.
create that.
Hmm.
So 33 years as a Jane Doe, that's a long.
Right. And her family didn't know where she was. They didn't know what
Mm,
happened to her. They didn't even know she was dead. She was finally identified in 2019 through DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, the same technology that's been breaking open cold cases all over the country. Audrey Lee Cook, that was her name, and she deserved to have it spoken out loud for 33 years.
yes, my goodness.
And
I
then
mourn for her and her family for
I
that.
can't imagine waiting 33 years to
No,
know what happened to your person. I do not
no.
understand. And then we have Donna Gunsulin Prudhomme. She was found September 8th, 1991. She was the fourth body found in that field. She was 34 years old and a young mother who had reportedly left an abusive husband. Like Audrey, she was a Jane Doe when she was found, and investigators called her Janet Doe. And like Audrey, she would remain unidentified for decades until 2019 when DNA and genetic genealogy finally gave her back her name. And just to think that she was reportedly leaving an abusive husband, getting out of that situation, and then she ends up dead in this field, and nobody knows where she is or who she is for 33 years.
No, that it was so, like, so heartbreaking. And I just want to point out a couple patterns that I have seen because this helps you guys understand where my head is at as far as, like, the theories and stuff behind what's happening. So far, out of the four women, right? That's one, Heidi, two, Laura, three, Audrey, and four, Donna.
Done. Mhm.
So four so far. Two are Jane Does for over 30 years.
Mhm.
Two of them are 30 years old
Mhm.
and supposed to be or suspected to be in their 30s.
Right.
And they're all four found within just a couple yards of each other in the exact same spot. And you are trying to tell me that there's no connection to that, to the age range being the same, the location being the same, how their bodies were found being the same. It's a lot of sames to
And
not
that
be a
they were
connection.
found not only in the same field, but so close together.
Right.
All of those things together. I mean, I realize we're looking back on it and they say, hindsight is 2020,
Mhm.
but we're also not detectives. And I would just feel like even in 1980, whatever, you would still be able to reason these things out. After I find the fourth body in the same field, that is at least gonna be a lane that I go down to try to see if there's something there.
I almost feel like because, like, watching the documentary, there was I cannot remember her name. But there was a woman who was speaking throughout the documentary. She's one of the main people speaking, and she was saying about how, like, during the time when the fourth body was found, they did DNA was around. They had the option to do DNA, but for some of the cases, for some of the discoveries, they could not because League City was doing such a bad job with their evidence that the evidence was destroyed. There was no DNA to test. They couldn't even go
That
back
just
and
makes
test
it
it because they
worse.
weren't doing a good job. So I feel like that is partially them trying to cover up, like, the shitty job that was being done. Not by everybody, but by
Right,
those
and
that
I
were
was gonna
messing
say,
up.
to clarify, like we did on the first time that we did this episode, that we're not necessarily speaking about individual investigators or police officers. This is more of a systematic failure for
Yeah.
these people because they were vulnerable people, and as simple as this seems to put together, for me, it seems like it didn't matter. The effort just wasn't put there because these people were less dead than, some person that wasn't homeless or on drugs or
Right.
in transition or whatever the situation. Nobody was really caring because some of these people's families didn't even know what had happened to them.
I mean, and it doesn't even matter the background information between all of it.
Right.
It's how many murders or how many disappearances or bodies found, and there's nothing. And
Right.
this is just the beginning. These are just the 4 that brought the attention to it. It's
Right.
not that there was nothing else happening.
Hmm.
So that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they would say.
Right. Okay. And so these were women who, for one reason or another, weren't immediately missed in a way that triggered massive searches, women whose disappearances didn't make front page news, and women who, because of their circumstances, as I was saying, their backgrounds, their lifestyles, slipped through the cracks of a system that was supposed to protect them. And that is one of the most infuriating parts of this entire case.
It was devastating to hear the Tim Miller say on the documentary that he felt like the police did everything in their job, like in their will and in their power to make it feel like he was losing his mind and
Right.
going crazy when he was trying to get them to go do these searches or like, hey, maybe these are these connections or
Right.
whatever the case is. And that's horrible. And for it to just be like, oh, go home, she'll call you. Like, and it seemed like
Exactly.
for so many of these women, for the families who were there trying to make the effort to
Hmm.
figure out what was going on, they just kept dismissing them.
Yeah.
But that is what Heidi parents said. That's what Tim Miller was saying.
Mhm.
And then the fact that it was like, yeah, we couldn't be in contact. Why would that be a
So
thing
that
to
makes
say?
it seems even more like a cover up because we don't
Right.
want y'all to talk to each other. Either it is a cover up or this is massive ineptitude and laziness. It's
'Cause
one
I
or the
don't
other.
understand, even if it's like, oh, they're dealing with the loss,
What do you
wouldn't
mean?
it be more beneficial for us to be in contact because we are going through the same thing? Like, I
Right.
lost a
And when have
daughter
the
the
cops ever
same
said
way.
that? When did police officers start being therapists for victims' families? That's not what
That's
they
not
do.
your job description.
So that's not why they were doing that in my mind.
Yeah,
This is
that's
my
I
opinion,
I agree.
but that's not why they were doing that.
Yeah,
That wasn't their concern because they weren't concerned about these women, so they damn
and to
sure
just
weren't concerned about their
disregard
families.
and push a dad like, "Yeah, whatever, we're not gonna do that. This that
Right.
that case has nothing to do with this, and, like, you should just let me do my job." But, like, if you were doing your job, I wouldn't have to do it. I
Right.
wouldn't be
You would
here.
be coming to me with these things.
Right,
I wouldn't
right.
have to come to you.
Yeah,
This
that
is
so
what we're
that's
doing now to find your daughter. This is what we're working on now. You would be coming to me with this information. I
yeah,
wouldn't be coming to you giving you ideas of what to do because that is literally your job.
correct, and that was just complete disrespect and uncalled for from the officer who said it, whoever it was that was handling Mr. Tim Miller.
Mhm. And to think
Uncalled
about
for.
how helpless and frustrated you had to feel to the point where I don't want anyone else to feel how I feel in this situation and how the families that are going through this with me are feeling. So I'm going to do what I can and to help just strangers in this situation. I mean, it says a lot about him.
I mean, for somebody who's like has personal experience with like missing persons, because I had a close friend of mine go missing my freshman year in college over Christmas break. She never came back. We didn't hear from her. We got fake text messages from the person she was supposed to be with. It was like a whole thing. So I can understand the emotion he had originally, but to be able to turn all of that and then I definitely feel like what he was getting, the kickback he was getting from the police, that definitely fueled that pain. It
Yeah,
helped turn that
and
into
then
like
determination.
yeah, it helped turn that into I'm not gonna let anybody else feel this way, regardless to what the
Right.
police are not willing to do. I'm gonna
There
make
will
sure
be
that you
somebody to help.
somebody out there. Yeah,
Yeah, there will be
that's
somebody
amazing.
to help.
That's amazing. Hats off to Tim
Yes,
Miller.
yes. So let's really talk about the distances because in this case, geography is evidence and sometimes the only evidence we have.
Yeah, sometimes, and for this situation, like we keep saying that they were close, so we're gonna tell you how close they
Exactly how
were.
close. Heidi Fye, again, found April 4th, 1984. She was the first body found. And then we have Laura Miller, who was found February 2nd, 1986. And she was 60 feet or 18 meters from Heidi Fye.
60 feet.
Audrey Cook, same day, same search area near a tree. So within whatever this small search area was, because it had to be small because they didn't find Laura when they found Heidi. Well, no, it was a small search area because they were finding these people piecemeal. Not every, these two were together, and then later on they find somebody else. But these two are like just
Yeah, they
feet
were
from
just feet
each
from each other. They
other.
all were,
Yeah.
Heidi and them. So it's crazy that they didn't find Laura and
Hmm.
Audrey when they were searching, when they found Heidi,
Yeah.
because they were so close. If you watch the documentary on Netflix, they show you the
Hmm.
like map and with the
Right.
pinpoints and how close they it's literally like
They're right
right there.
there. Right there. And then Donna Prudhomme, that was September 8th, 1991, in the same field, and she was discovered by horseback riders near Stardust Trail Rides.
Which is in the same field and that is the only business that was out there
Mm.
in this
As a trail
area
ride.
off of Calder Road.
Mhm.
And, uh,
Right.
like, so a very concentrated area.
Yes,
It's very close.
extremely concentrated. All 4 bodies were found in the 3,000 block of Calder Road in the same abandoned field within a
Mhm.
space you could walk across in minutes.
Yes.
And here's what the Netflix docuseries Crime Scene: The Texas Killing Fields emphasizes. This wasn't a random scattering.
Mm.
This was a dumping ground. Someone or multiple someones knew this field, knew it was remote, knew it was accessible from I-45, and knew they could leave bodies there and they wouldn't be found immediately.
And then the payphones connect them too, at
Mhm.
least 2 of them,
Right. Heidi Fye and last seen at a payphone, and Laura Miller last seen at a payphone, both in Leak City, both visible and clearly both vulnerable. The Netflix series highlights this pattern, the way public payphones, which should have been safe, became hunting grounds, the way young women using the most ordinary technology of the 1980s became targets. Calder Road 4. Heidi, Laura, Audrey, and Donna are just the center of a much larger pattern. Along the I-45 corridor from the early 1970s through the 1990s, and even into the 2000s, bodies kept appearing.
how many total bodies, like, appeared during that time?
So the most common number that's cited is 34, but that depends on how you define the corridor and which cases you include. Some of the cases are solved, some have suspects, and some are still completely cold. So let me give you a sense of the timeline. We have 1971 to 1972, where a cluster of teenage girls disappears from the Galveston area. That was Sharon Shaw, Rhonda Johnson, Colette Wilson, Gloria Gonzalez, Debbie Ackerman, and Maria Johnson. Most of those were found dead. Most remain unsolved. In 1979, Susan Bowers, who was 12 years old, disappears. In 1983 to 1986, that was the Calder Road cluster. Heidi, Laura, Audrey, plus Sandra Ramber. who disappeared in 1983 and was never found in the field. And then 1986 is Shelley Sykes. She was 19, and that's when she was last seen. And then 1988, Susan Renee Richardson, she disappeared. In 1991, a Prudhomme was found in that field. 1996, Jean Baker, who was 13, was raped and strangled. Her case was solved in 2012, and Kevin Edison Smith was convicted. And then in 1997 is the William Reese murders. Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane. And they're separated from the Calder Road cluster, but along the same corridor. And then 2001 to 2006, there are more disappearances. Todd Tran Harriman, Sarah Trusty, and Teresa Venegas.
That makes my whole chest hurt. Like, there are so many names in that timeline. And that is some of them, because some of them women, there were more women found that were unidentified, or women not found, probably still in the fields and stuff that we don't know about. Decades and dozens of women, and a lot of them, like I said, are still unsolved. That is
That's just
so many
sad,
women whose
heartbreaking.
lives who just nobody knows, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And here's what makes it complicated. This wasn't one killer with one pattern. The evidence points to multiple offenders using the same region over time. Some cases are connected, some aren't. Some might be connected and we just don't know yet. And for decades, law enforcement treated each of them as isolated
That
incidents.
is exactly what the problem is, because
That's what
even
shut it
if
all down.
they are not connected, if you look at them, you can see
You
where
look at
the other ones
everything.
are connected. Some of them,
Yeah, you
it
look
is
at
no way
everything.
in the hell, no way in hell.
Mm-mm.
All
No,
those
not
bodies
especially when you're
are
talking
found.
over 50 years
All
of
of those
this.
bodies are found in the same spot.
I mean, I
Some
love
of 'em, a
Texas, but
lot
this
of
don't.
them, the same age range, same similar type
Yeah.
background, couple of them found in the same area, like taken or last seen in the same
I
areas.
mean, once you
Like, come
find
on.
4 bodies, let's just check the rest of this patch of
Let's just
land.
go and scan outward. We're gonna start right where we found this one, and everybody go out in a circle formation so everything get
Overreact,
covered.
overdo it. If you overdo it and it's nothing, well, we did our job and we
Yeah,
know
we
that it's
know
nobody
ain't
else
nothing
out
else
there.
out there, but
If we
ain't no
don't.
reason you had to go back years between, because it was 2 years
So
between
whoever
finding
this and whoever this guy was, if it was the same guy for those 4, he just that if they woulda, well, I guess because they were finding the people, they found them all, but if it's just like something could have been stopped and
right,
people's families could have known what was going on, so they aren't wondering and worrying about their even the
right, that's
people
what
who
the
didn't
dad was
know.
saying.
Yeah, even the people who didn't know where their children were, even,
Yeah,
like the one lady and their parents didn't know. Their family just didn't know where they were. And even those people, so for 30 years, they don't know where their person
nothing,
is.
I know
Whatever those
nothing.
circumstances were, they deserve to know. And
Yeah,
that person deserved their story to be told and their
yeah.
killer to be found.
And I don't think that it should matter what your background is. Like, oh,
Mm,
you're a prostitute, or
right.
you're homeless,
It
or
doesn't
whatever
matter.
the
It's
case
a
is, you're
person.
colored or whatever.
It's somebody's
It
family.
should be a search, or you come from a poor background.
Right.
It should be a search for everybody. Everybody should think about it as if, like, if this was my mom, or if this was my sister, or my whoever, I would want people to help me look for them.
And everybody should be mad about it, whether you have money or you don't, because the thought you should just consider they wouldn't care if you didn't have money. Like they still wouldn't care about your person. They're not doing this because they care so much about whoever your child is. They're
Right.
doing it because you have the money to make it. Now, as a parent, I wouldn't care. But after the situation, and I see that happening to other people, it infuriate me.
Yeah. Completely.
So we've touched on the investigative failures in previous episodes, but now I want to go through them in detail because understanding how this went wrong is the only way to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, we're gonna go through the failures for this one, because I mean, all of the all cases have
Mhm.
failures. Otherwise, there
Right.
wouldn't be unsolved
We wouldn't
cases,
have
or
nope, there
mm,
wouldn't be true crime
right,
podcasts,
or people,
unsolved
false
mysteries.
imprisonment, or any
Yeah,
of that. It's everything has its failure. All of it. That's just
right.
part of life. It just living life. You got failures,
Yeah.
but I don't even know where to start with this one because I
Mm-mm.
feel like that we've already named a couple.
Right. So many of the women who disappeared along the I-45 corridor were labeled runaways or troubled teens. Some were sex workers, some came from low income or unstable backgrounds. And because of those labels, investigations were delayed. Missing person reports weren't filed immediately, searches weren't launched, and media coverage was minimal at best.
Yeah, so that's what we were saying. The vulnerability bias. It should none of that should matter. None of that should have anything to do with it. Runaways, trouble teen. First of all, how would you know about that? Just because somebody goes missing, why would you automatically assume, oh, they're a runaway or they're a trouble teen?
Right, right, right. And it's not unique to this case, though. It's a systematic issue, which is what we were saying. We're not pointing out any detectives or anything. This is an issue of how the system works,
Mm,
and it affects missing persons investigations across the country.
yeah.
When a victim is perceived as troubled or at risk, there's an unconscious assumption that they chose to disappear, that they'll come back, that the situation isn't urgent. But that assumption costs lives because the first hours and days after a disappearance are critical for evidence collection,
Everybody knows that.
for witnesses' interviews, for tracking movements, and delays cost evidence. And then lost evidence means cold trails.
Which sucks horribly. Why waste any time? That should automatically be let's go, let's go, let's go, let's look for the evidence. That's what we need to be doing. Let's figure it out.
Right.
And if they had listened to, like for Laura's situation, they had listened to the dad,
Mhm.
then there would have been evidence, and her her cause of death wouldn't have gone in as unknown, like because
Mhm.
the animals and stuff had got to her and stuff.
Right.
She had been out there so long.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
mean, so in this case, what do you think maybe should have happened?
Well, for me, it's clear that the immediate classification as endangered missing persons is important. And immediate Amber Alerts are equivalent notifications and immediate search
Mhm.
guides because every disappearance should be treated as potentially life threatening until proven otherwise, period.
I agree.
So, what happened? Different departments handled different cases. Houston Police, Galveston County Sheriffs, League City Police, and each had their own files, their own systems, and their own priorities. There was no shared database, no way to cross reference disappearances across jurisdictions, and no way to see patterns that were staring them in the face. And I would just like to point out here that when we're talking about Houston Police and Galveston County Sheriff and League City Police, these are especially, we'll make it relational to Texas. These are close cities. You know, there is not, it could take you an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours to drive across Houston, depending on traffic and time of day and exactly where you're coming from and where you're going. But we're talking about right next to each other.
Yeah.
These cities were. So it's not, it wouldn't be difficult. And I'm assuming that the way, especially in small towns, people talk, that the police had to hear at least the gossip, which should have triggered something.
I completely agree. And if I'm remembering correctly in the documentary, it was saying over the whole, like the stretch of where all of this is happening off of I-45, it was 11 jurisdictions involved in this. So, I mean, that in itself is
Yeah.
insane. That is a large amount of jurisdictions. But to know that none of them are
Right.
talking,
Mhm.
like, nobody. So a girl disappears in Galveston, and then another in Lake City, and then another in Houston, and nobody connects them because nobody's talking.
Right.
So,
Nobody's sharing information. Nobody's it doesn't, to me, I don't know this for a fact, but it does not to me seem that these officers, that these departments were doing what they were supposed to do,
yeah.
just in general. Because if you hear, I mean, I know small towns because I've lived in a few. And people talk.
Mhm.
People talk. Even in schools, when you guys were in school in
Yep.
small, you know everything that's going
Everything.
on, whether it's the true story or not. So the police had to be hearing this, and it's I don't understand because each department is looking at their own case in isolation.
Yeah.
They're not seeing the geographic cluttering. They're not seeing similar victim profiles. They're not seeing the pattern of serial offender operating along a highway corridor.
Which is crazy because I'm not a police officer and I picked up on all of
Right.
that just watching the documentary or like even doing the research and looking into the different things, there are so many similarities. And there are cases and like instances along the different situations where clearly it's not the same person. You know, they are
Right.
not all connected. That is
Right.
true. But there are strong connections between certain ones that were just overlooked. And I don't think that that should have happened.
Shouldn't have. There's no reason it should have happened.
Mm,
But what should have happened, which I think we've moved more into, is a centralized tracking system.
mm,
So our modern systems like NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Person System, exist now because of cases like this.
yeah,
But in the 1970s and 80s and even the 90s, that excuse me, I can't talk. That coordination didn't exist.
yeah.
Today, when a body is found or a person goes missing, it can be entered into NamUs and cross-referenced nationally. That technology could have changed everything in the killing fields case.
No, definitely. Most definitely, especially if the officers were putting it to use.
Right. Then if things like that definitely make it easier now. And
Yeah,
even now we see that serial killer cases in particular are very hard to connect because the killer doesn't often know the victims and the victims don't know each other. So it's hard to connect those things until you see the pattern.
right.
But I mean, we're talking four bodies in a small area of people, even if we just talk about the Calder four.
Right, and then like I mentioned earlier, there clearly was, like, crime scene
Hmm.
mismanagement happening
Clearly, clearly.
somewhere around here because,
Hmm.
I mean, no evidence, no DNA being able to be
Yeah,
tested.
right, right. So what happened? The dump sites, particularly the Calder Road field, were not properly secured. Bodies were left exposed to the weather and environmental contamination, and evidence was lost to rain, to animals, to time.
How could you not protect the scenes like that? That's literally what you need to solve these cases.
When I was first hearing that, I'm like, are they referring to how the bodies were out in the field? Like they were just exposed to the elements. And so that was the breakdown. But no, I mean, of course, that was a part of it.
Yeah,
But we're talking about
once they were
within the
discovered.
investigation,
Mhm.
they didn't protect the scenes. And in some cases, the scenes weren't even recognized as crime scenes immediately. When Heidi Fai's skull was found by a dog, it took time to establish the full scope of what was in the field. By the time systematic searches were conducted, evidence had degraded, DNA had broken down, fibers had washed away, and trace evidence was gone.
And so, like, not all of that is on the police, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
them not being able to find Heidi's body or Heidi's body, and right when they found the skull, they had to go search for that. That's
Right,
nothing that they
right,
could have done about that,
absolutely.
but that did affect the
Mhm.
evidence that was out there,
It did.
not due to anything that the police or investigators had
Mhm.
part of.
Right. So what should happen in these types of cases, I would think, is you immediately control your perimeter. You preserve the forensic evidence from the moment the remains are discovered. Grid searches and evidence collection protocols need to be followed. Modern forensic archaeology and anthropology techniques can recover evidence from even degraded scenes, but only if the scene is protected from further contamination.
And that makes me wonder if, like, when they were doing these searches, since they weren't finding these other women, like, I feel like they should have, if they were doing the grid searches like they should have, because
Right.
I feel
They
like
would have found it.
you would have found them. They
Mhm.
were so close to each other.
Right. Right. So,
Oh, and then also all of the confessions throughout the
mhm.
investigation with all of these things happening. Like we said, this
It's
is
just crazy.
years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so many, it's just crazy. So Michael Lloyd self-confessed to some of the early 1970s murders, and law enforcement relied heavily on that confession. They built cases around it. But the confession was likely coerced. The details were inconsistent with physical evidence, and Self may have been innocent.
So they closed cases based on bad confessions, which is not unheard of. People have definitely done this for
And I
different
hope,
reasons.
right, right. And so, yes, there were cases that were closed based on a bad confession. And, I think over the years, our law enforcement has realized that it's part of their job to see when someone is just confessing. Like these people who just go to these cases that aren't solved and just for some reason that I don't understand start confessing. Now, hopefully, I think they have things in place where they can kind of suss that out, like leaving information out of the news and things like that.
Yeah, which I think is a awesome tactic.
Right. But in this case, with them, closing these cases based on that confession, they may have stopped looking for the real offender. They may have created a false sense of security in that we got the guy while the actual killer continued to operate.
Which obviously in somewhere in some aspect that is what happened because there's no way this went on for as long as it did, and you
Right.
had who you needed to have.
Right. Clearly. So, evidence first investigations are important. Confessions should be corroborated with physical evidence, timeline analysis, and witness statements. If the confession doesn't match the evidence, you don't build the case around the confession, you question the confession. And cases were treated as isolated incidents, so the serial pattern wasn't recognized for years, possibly decades.
Even with the 4 bodies all in the same field, that's the part. Because how is that pattern not recognized?
Right. Because
None of
the
that.
field wasn't searched systematically after Heidi 5 was found. Laura Miller wasn't found until a dedicated search was conducted 2 years later. Audrey Cook was found during that same search, and she was a Jane Doe. So there was no missing persons report to connect to her. Donna Purdhome wasn't found until 1991, 5 years after Laura and Audrey. Doesn't make sense. The pattern was there, but nobody saw it until it was too late.
Which is insane, and I feel like when they say there's no missing persons report, I believe that it's in what they had, like, the system or database they had. I don't think that's everywhere. I don't think they had the, like, connected like, the database to connect everywhere or check, like,
In other
national yeah.
jurisdictions, if
I think it was
somebody's
just what they had
in
in
their
League
area.
City or wherever she was found, so that way that's what they mean when it says no person
And
missing
like
persons report.
was it Laura who had just moved to League
Had
City?
just moved there from Dickinson.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But she was new in that area.
Yeah,
So behavior and geographic profiling is necessary when multiple bodies are found in the same location. That should trigger immediate serial offender protocols. FBI involvement, VICAP, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, should have been engaged. Those tools existed, they just weren't used.
which is crazy because I don't understand
Why would you
how it
not?
didn't trigger.
That just builds on the fact that there was either corruption or just inept police work. It,
Right.
it was something. This goes even further than just a general breakdown because they had tools at the systems put the tools in place for them to use, but they weren't using it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of that was just because of what we were talking about already, the
Mhm.
vulnerability bias and them not wanting to put those tools
They're
towards
feeling
it.
like they'll come back, or these people disappear all the time.
Yeah,
It's not worth our effort.
for whatever
Yeah.
ridiculous reasons.
So expect especially victims from low income backgrounds in unstable homes or marginalized communities, they receive less media coverage and less urgent law enforcement responses.
And that is not just these cases that
It
we're
is
talking
not.
about. That happens so frequently, and it is horrible. It's almost disgusting
Yeah.
that that happens so frequently
And that,
because
that we have a name for it, that people are less dead because that's how it's treated.
how you less
That's
dead.
horrible.
Yeah.
That's horrible. So it's a major systematic issue that persists today. The missing white woman syndrome is a documented phenomenon. Certain victims receive disproportionate media attention while others are ignored. But the Texas Killing Fields case shows the deadly consequences of that bias. When victims aren't seen as worth searching for, killers operate with impunity.
Yeah, because who's pushing back when I know that you're not look, I got away with it this time. I got away with it the second
I
time.
found the
And
perfect
then
victim.
I see these
Mhm.
people getting away with, attacking these people. Why wouldn't I get away with that?
Right.
I
And for some serial killers, that's why they choose the people they choose because it's easier because people aren't going to look for them. And even
mhm,
if their family says, hey, they're missing, the police don't respond.
right.
And it's important that we have equal response for every missing person, regardless of background, circumstances, or their perceived risk factors. Every disappearance is a potential homicide until proven otherwise.
Yes. Yes.
So that's where we are at the end of episode 1. We have a field, 4 women found there, 2 identified immediately, 2 Jane Does for over 3 decades, a corridor with 30 plus bodies over 50 years, a system that failed to see the patterns, failed to protect the vulnerable, and failed to bring answers to families who deserve them.
Breaking.
And we have payphones, ordinary technology that became hunting grounds, 60 feet between 2 victims, a pattern hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, we have a payphone.
Right.
One payphone for 2 women, and even that, no connection.
No
Crazy,
connection.
crazy. Next week, I'm gonna be taking the lead, and we're gonna talk about the suspects because it's kinda juicy. Like, that's where it's like,
That's where we can really dig into some of the psychology of the type of people who do this.
yeah, and the theories and, like, okay, so do we agree or do we not agree?
Right, right. So we'll be talking about Clyde Hedrick, James Elmore Jr., and William Reese, and Edward Harrow Bell. I cannot talk. And the theories about who did what, when, and to whom. We're also going to talk about the forensic breakthroughs, the DNA, the genetic genealogy that finally started giving names back to the nameless. And we're going to talk about a father who refused to let his daughter's case go cold and how his refusal may have just cracked this thing wide open.
Yes, we're gonna talk about Tim Miller, my favorite dad,
Right? Dad of the
dad
galaxy.
of the galaxy.
So again, guys, we'll see you next Monday for part 2. Follow us on all the socials. Follow, share, like, follow,
Review, comment,
do all of the things. When you see us somewhere, just hit all the buttons, hit all of
all of the
them,
buttons available except for
and
the block.
no, don't do the block, just the buttons. Don't hit the little 3 lines to go find things. No, you're focusing on the wrong things. Just the
Right,
things right there in your
right,
face.
right. And I'm super excited for next week because I like the genetic
The
genealogy and
breakdown
the way
and all
they'll
that
be able to
stuff.
do all of that with the DNA science is extremely when they use it like that, it's extremely fascinating for me.
Mhm.
So we'll see you guys next Monday and take care of yourselves.
Bye, guys.